In this edition of Back in History, we bring to you the story of the gruesome assassination of Kudirat Abiola. She was assassinated in Lagos State, Nigeria on 4th day of June 1996. She was a well-known woman, and the news of her death was received with great shock at home, in Nigeria and across the various countries of the world. Some persons were arrested and detained in connection with the murder. They were tried for several years at the Lagos State High Court. In the end, two of the prime suspects were convicted and sentenced to death by hanging, but on appeal, they were acquitted and discharged for want of evidence. The memory of Kudirat Abiola still remains fresh in the hearts of many persons across Nigeria and around the world till today. Welcome to this edition of Back in History. Kudirat Abiola was the wife of Chief hmmm Abiola. Abiola was a popular Nigerian politician, industrialist, and philanthropist. He was a registered member of the Social Democratic Party (SDP) and was the presidential candidate of the party in the build-up to the June 12, 1993 general election. At that time, Nigerians were hungry for a quick return to civilian administration after several years of military rule and dictatorship. There was thus a wave of popular participation in the electoral process, and the choice of hmmm Abiola as a candidate of one of the two leading political parties in the country was greeted with wide acceptability, which was reflected in the voting pattern across the country. On the day of the election, millions of Nigerians lined up in front of the SDP logo to cast their votes in favor of hmmm Abiola. At the close of ballots, hmmm Abiola won in about 98% of the total votes cast across the country, with results from only two states left to be declared. While the country waited to hear the final announcement of results and the pronouncement of hmmm Abiola as the winner of the presidential election, the unthinkable happened. The military stopped the further announcement, and before Nigerians could fully understand what was going on, the election was completely annulled. hmmm Abiola thus became a man who came very close to the presidency of Nigeria, but who was blatantly denied the precious opportunity of clinching the presidency. A serious struggle thus began across the country and in the diaspora to mount pressure on the military for them to allow hmmm Abiola to be announced and sworn in as the President of the Federal Republic of Nigeria, having secured the majority of lawful votes cast at the election. Abiola was eventually arrested and detained by the military, and the struggle thus expanded to include the agitation for the release of Abiola from prison. One of the prominent persons who spearheaded the struggle for the actualization of the mandate of hmmm Abiola was Kudirat Abiola. At that time, the military had once again taken over the reins of power in the country, with Sani Abacha as the head of state, with little or no tolerance to criticism and opposition. The presence of the military in power did not, however, discourage Kudirat from her determined struggle for the actualization of the mandate of her husband and the release of the husband from unlawful detention. It, however, appears that some persons within the country were not comfortable with her activities or sustained struggle for the actualization of a mandate that was annulled and considered forgotten by the military. Kudirat started receiving threats to her life from unknown persons until she was finally brought down by the assassin's bullets in broad daylight on the streets of Lagos State, Nigeria. On the ill-fated day, Kudirat Abiola dressed up at home and stepped out for the day's activities. She was driven by her personal driver in a white-colored Mercedes-Benz car. In the city of Lagos, there are several traffic points, causing vehicles to slow down at intervals in the course of her journey. Kudirat's car was approaching the popular 7-Up depot bus stop in Ikeja, and her vehicle began to slow down as there was a traffic point in front. Unknown to Kudirat and her driver, their vehicle was closely followed by an unmarked vehicle. In the said unmarked vehicle, there were 6 heavily armed men whose mission was to shoot and kill Kudirat at all costs. The assassins shot into Kudirat's vehicle. The driver was hit and the vehicle came to a halt, giving the assassins more shooting advantage. Kudirat was shot in the forehead and the bullet smashed her brain, leaving her unconscious. Following the rain of bullets on Kudirat and the escape of the assassins, Kudirat was rushed to a hospital by public-spirited individuals. She was taken into the intensive care unit and the medical personnel on duty battled assiduously to save her life, to no avail. Kudirat died, and the news of her death was received with shock across the country. Kudirat was only 44 years old at the time of her death. Also at the time of her death, her husband was in detention at the behest of the military. In other words, the news of the death of Kudirat Abiola was relayed to the husband in his prison cell. Kudirat's driver did not also survive the attack. He was shot at close range by the assassins, and his chances of survival was extremely slim. In a single day and in very few minutes, humanity lost 2 human persons, Kudirat Abiola and her personal driver, to the assassin's bullets. The military government at the time, which was headed by General Sani Abacha, frowned seriously at the assassination of Kudirat and her driver, and immediately pledged a bounty of $45,000 as reward for anyone who would provide information that can lead to the arrest of the killers. General Abacha immediately blamed terrorism and the increasing wealth of crime in the country for the assassination. He promised that his government will fish out the persons who shot and killed Kudirat in such a callous, horrific and inhuman manner. The military government later sent a high-powered delegation to the Abiola family to commiserate with them over the assassination of their matriarch. It is important to note that several Nigerian citizens received the condemnation by the military with mixed feelings. Citizens also viewed the condolence visit with mixed feelings. Inside the same car with Kudirat was her personal assistant Lateef Shofolohan. Interestingly, Lateef was not shot by the assassins. His life was spared. Before her eventual assassination, Kudirat had complained of threats to her life by unknown persons. She complained that her vehicles were usually trailed by vehicles whose number plates were concealed. 1 month before the assassination, precisely in May 1996, she was arrested by agents of the state for, quote, possessing publications that were deemed to be critical of the Abacha military government. Her assassination was officially announced to the world by MK Abiola's brother, Mudashiru Abiola. As noted earlier, the assassination of Kudirat Abiola was widely condemned at home and abroad. South Africa condemned the attack in a press release by its Foreign Affairs Minister Alfred Nzo, who called the attack, quote, a horrific event. He added, unquote, that it is all the more regrettable that such tragedy occurred while her husband remains detained in custody. On his part, the spokesperson for the British Foreign Office described the attack as, quote, a tragic news. Other countries also condemned the attack. Civil liberty organizations and human rights groups also condemned the attack. There were protests in the country with persons carrying placards amidst fear of arrest and detention by the military and security agents. It is important to note that although Kudirat was killed in 1996 during the military regime of Sani Abacha, no serious investigation was done to unravel the assassination. Despite the promises of the military junta, not much was done by the military to match its words with action. Serious efforts to unravel the mystery behind the killing was launched during the tenure of President